Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here. Hope you're having a great day. Let's take a quick look here at SUI, see what's going on. It's actually looking pretty solid here in the overall sense. We're going to talk a little bit about this local fair value gap that just got created, as well as this price range, this resistance range that we're traveling into. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, there's a lot of confluence between 220 and 225 as a previous support turned into a new resistance. We're seeing that hold pretty strong right there at that 225 level. So let's look at the back end liquidation data, kind of get some perspective on where we're at here and kind of go from there, see if there's any potential incentive there. And I want to say thank you again for always hitting the like button, commenting below if you get a chance. Deeply appreciate that. Just random statistics here, we get less than 5% people like my videos versus actually commenting or just appreciating the content. So if you continue to appreciate it, show me how much you do. I appreciate that as well. So much appreciation. Well, let's see if we can appreciate this chart here for SUI and see if that $2 or 230 range gets hit first. We're closer to 230, so an upper liquidation sweep makes a little bit more sense. From a larger perspective too, we can see a tremendous amount of liquidation above 240. So it does reinforce resistance in that range, but it also tells us that, hey, once we break out, we're going to break out really hard. It's going to run fast. So that's good news. Liquidation delta is actually shifted bullish here. This is good. Last week, it was pretty bearish in the overall sense. So granted, this isn't like a firm indication that we're back on track. It tells us the trend is moving up and that we are seeing more longs than shorts at this moment. And you typically don't want to try to fight against that. Okay, don't go against the grain, as I like to say. We look at open interest. We can see there's a chunk of open interest at 220 to 222, roughly 216, and again 210. So those are just areas where we see the most amount of volume. Now, when we take a look at the daily time frame, we want to recognize here that this coin, among others, one of the few coins actually that should be doing well, isn't from a macro perspective. So what that basically just means is we not only do have a lot of confluence here at 226, so that local point of control rejecting the price action here today, but we all have that 50-day SMA as well. So it really just implies that we haven't broken free from this descending trend, and we want to maybe wait to consider taking a long position with this coin. We're also under 50 on the RSI. While money flow index is high, that's a good shift, a good consideration for a shift in momentum. It's not enough to warrant a long position with confidence, at least not for me, because I don't really like to just throw money into a coin with the hopes that it's going to do well because I feel passionate about it. That's ridiculous. Nobody should be doing that. But we can see here, if we look from 4-hour time frame, this is a transitionary time frame. We've been holding very strong above this 210 mark. So 210 is that local bottom. I think the likelihood of pushing through that's pretty low, but we got to see and wait because obviously we're seeing a pretty significant sell-off here in just the last hour or so since Bitcoin rejected off at 88,000. We are in a short position, by the way, with Bitcoin at 88,000. I shorted that coin roughly an hour ago. So I personally feel like we're going to see some further downside for this coin and most altcoins, because when you look at it, Bitcoin dominance is still on its way up, and altcoins are performing very poorly contrary to Bitcoin's pump here today. So that leads me to believe that shorting altcoins is probably a good strategy here for the moment until Bitcoin dominance or just Bitcoin proves otherwise. So that's roughly where we're at here. It's not like an exact, it's not going to perfectly work out the way that I'm talking about here today, but it does in fact imply that, we are more likely to go down than up. However, the 4-hour time frame does have a lot of confirming factors, letting us know we are moderately back on track. This is a very good 4-hour time frame. Just it would make sense for a short-term pullback to occur with this coin before it continues higher. So just keep in mind, we got kind of a local higher here, about 217, 218. There's a fair value gap right in that range. It would make a lot of sense to see I would say 210 and 215 range as a better case scenario, and that would be a good consideration for a long at that point. Between now and then, I'm not really interested in taking a short because it may be, even though it will likely pull back, I don't really like to short this coin. But for the other reasons too, I don't like to get too heavy on shorts either, especially when Bitcoin's showing and broken mostly bullish here recently. So I think Bitcoin's on its way to 90,000. It would make a lot more sense for the price to pull back a little bit more before we see it take off again. That's roughly where we're at. Anyways, those are just things I'm always going to be paying attention to. I'm a little bit more on the conservative side. I'd much rather wait for a pullback that never happens than trying to long the top. Okay, so that's just me personally. So what are your thoughts? How do you like to trade? Are you a breakout trader? If so, what's your success rate? Generally, they are not very successful in this kind of market. But either way you look at it, thanks again for the awesome feedback from my community here. We had some pretty nice profits from Solana over the weekend, but more importantly, both of our Bitcoin longs, 32% and 58%, worked out very well yesterday when we saw that nice little pump from Bitcoin. So congrats on that one. All right, folks, have a good rest of the day. Look forward to seeing the next one. Take care of yourself out there. Bye-bye.